Well, hey, here we go. Let's dive in. Here we are back to a short chapter, but this is it. We're here. We have finally officially arrived to the Red Wedding. It's not the actual Red Wedding itself, but we have arrived to the Red Wedding quite literally. And
the final chapter before the Catelyn chapter. Yeah,
for sure. So Sandor and Arya arrive at the Twins, where Sandor hopes to ransom Arya to her family. To get there, the Hound had robbed a farmer of his wagon and casks to disguise themselves as simple farmers who have come to bring pork to the feast. The castle is closed, so they are sent to the pavilions instead, where the common soldiers are. Arya recognizes a few coat of arms, but there is nobody she knows. The soldiers drink to the health of Queen Jane, whose name is unfamiliar to Arya. As Sandor wants to ransom Arya, they head to the castle. And like I said, this chapter itself is actually like really short. I think the audiobook was like 10 minutes. I mean, there's really not a ton to it, but I think what it is we've been building and building and building this tension of the Red Wedding. We've been seeing things going slightly weird. We've been seeing things, not making sense. We felt the danger like we felt in last time in the Catelyn chapter, where, okay, you can see Walder Frey having these slights here and there, but hey, we should be protected. But the thing I really like about this chapter is you can finally tell that everything isn't right. Like, there's a lot of soldiers outside of the castle, right? Like soldiers who seem ready to go to battle, like ready
not
to go
a wedding,
to war,
but a battle.
Yeah, and actually the best thing about this chapter is honestly the Hound. Like that you can even tell the Hound is like, something's kind of off here, right? And what it does is it sets you up for the next chapter where it feels like, we're trapped inside.
Yeah. Okay, well then what's the situation inside, which was already ominous to begin with. And let's not forget, we've been following Arya around this book a ton. We've followed her through many, many, many miles and leagues to get to this point where she's about to be reunited with her family. And little does she know, she will not be reunited with her family ever again, at least when it comes to her brother Rob and her mother Catelyn, though Lady Stoneheart leaves kind of an open door for that. I think that this is one of the rug pulls that hurts the most when you think, outside of obviously the deaths, but thinking about poor little Arya, who is just a little girl, fingertips away, from basically being able to walk through a door and see her mother, and who she hasn't seen in a very long time at this point. It's really sad. It's really, really sad.
It is.
And another thing about this is interesting to me is just a reminder about how information travels through Westeros, which is one of my favorite devices of the series. Queen Jane. Let's drink the Queen Jane. Who's Jane? Arya has no idea. And think about this. After the Red Wedding, we'll get to her chapters, but we should go in with the mindset that Arya still doesn't know all the details. Arya honestly couldn't tell you what really happened at the Red Wedding outside of the fact that her family is dead. They've been betrayed, but she doesn't understand the links of decisions that have led to this point. Like, she is completely unaware of all of this. And it leaves Westeros on a boat and goes to Essos without many answers at all, other than the fact that she has lived through once again another tragedy. Like, that is so impactful to her character arc later down the road, and not having those answers. So when she does end up coming back to Westeros, I wonder, will she see Jane? Will she learn more? Like, will she learn about her brother and his final you know what I mean? Like, there is opportunities for Arya to actually have this revisited later down the line and get more context for everything that was happening.
Yeah. One of the lines here that's actually, it's kind of almost in a way like a throwaway line, but to me it sums up this chapter and really, you could argue, a lot of Arya's arc in general. So it's just like in the thirdish paragraph here. The riders split and circled them for a look before they came up close. Clegane drew the wain to halt and waited patiently on their pleasure. The knight bore spear and sword while his squires carried longbows. The badges on their jerkins were smaller versions of the sigil sewn on their master's surcoat. A black pitchfork on a golden bar, sinister upon a russet field. Arya had thought of revealing herself to the first outriders they encountered, but she had always pictured gray-cloaked men with the dire wolf on their breasts. She might have risked it even if they had worn the Umber Giant or the Glover Fist, but she did not know the Pitchfork Knight of whom they served. The closest thing to a pitchfork she'd ever seen at Winterfell was the trident in the hand of Lord Manderley's Merriman. So I just like that line in there. Like Arya had pictured them with the dire wolves on their breasts, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
so much of what she's thinking. Like, oh, I'm going to go and it's going to be Rob's men and everything's going to be great. And it's not. And she's
Yeah.
like, oh, and then she sees something else. Like they think that, Ned Stark's going to be able to take the black and he can't, and he's beheaded. And that's what she sees. Like, it feels like then same thing. We go meet Jack and Hagar. And I think she's thinking it's going to be something else. And it's, whoa, now I'm, blind. And that's like so much of her story is
Not
the
great.
same thing with that line. Yeah.
Not great, right? A lot of ruined expectations. I mean, we could even go into this about Sansa, right? And how Sansa imagined this going. You could do this with Cersei and what she imagined Robert's death playing out like. Like this series is all about putting people in very precarious positions and ruining their expectations. I think anyone who's an adult can attest to the fact that our expectations are usually readjusted through not the best means, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like you said, what's it going to be like when she comes back and who knows? I mean, I think that's I don't know if we're going to get that same scene, but in the show, like it's one of the most rewarding scenes ever and it's such a small little, like, I don't know. It's not, I don't even think the whole scene's like 2 minutes, is where she goes and meets Hot Pie, and Hot Pie's like, oh, didn't you hear the Starks retook Winterfell? It's like,
Yeah.
what? Like, and then,
Excuse me?
because she was totally like planning on, she's like, I'm gonna go down to, she's like, I'm gonna go to King's Landing, right? She told Ed Sheeran that I'm gonna go kill she said I'm gonna go kill Cersei. And they're like laughing, like, yeah. Like, did I
Yeah,
say
I
her
guess the
right?
expectations kind of go both ways, right? People expect Arya to be a destroyed, distraught, traumatized little girl, and we know that she will be coming back to Westeros with a power that no one will expect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This paragraph 2 here. Evenfall found them still trudging toward the Green Fork and Lady Frey's twins' castle. I am almost there, Arya thought. She knew she ought to be excited, but her belly was knotted up tight. Maybe that was just the fever she'd been fighting, but maybe not. Last night she'd had a bad dream, a terrible dream. She couldn't remember what she'd dreamed of now, but the feeling had lingered all day. If anything, it had only gotten stronger. Fear cuts deeper than swords. She had to be strong now. That's the way her father told her. There was nothing between her and her mother but a castle gate, a river, and an army. But it was Rob's army, so there was no real danger there. Was there?
Mm.
Yeah. Even she knows she has a bad dream. They don't talk about what the dream is. And she starts to freak out about it a little bit. Then the next chapter, Roose Bolton was one of them, though, the Leech Lord, as the outlaws called him. That made her uneasy. She had fled Harrenhal to get away from Bolton as much as she did the Bloody Mummers, and she had to cut the throat of one of his guards to escape. Did he know she'd done that, or did he blame Gendry or Hot Pie? It continues on a little bit there. It talks about the Hound. The Hound had hacked handfuls of her hair off only 2 days past. He was even worse. He was an even worse barber than Yoren, and he'd left her half bald on one side. Rob won't know me either, I bet, or even Mother. She had been a little girl the last time she saw them. The day Lord Eddard Stark left Winterfell. And then it talks about the music. They could hear the music as they're heading to the castle.
Yeah, and the music will continue next chapter with the drums and the Rains of Castamere and all these things. Kind of crescendo next chapter, you could say, a very dark one. I like this piece that you read, though, because it's George tidying up a little bit here, saying, hey, there's a reason why people aren't recognizing Arya Stark. It's because Arya Stark has grown up. At least some. Like, she's rapidly changing. Kids between like 7 and 14, oh my God, they change so much. But on top of that, you got he got the Hound giving her a fresh fade, and, and apparently
Mm-hmm.
he did not get the lines right. So I think this is George kind of tidying up a little bit and reminding us maybe why Arya would not be recognized. On top of the fact that there's tons of people who don't travel enough to even know what the Stark kids look like. So without their cloak and standing next to their dad, who is now deceased. Also, Eddard Stark mentioned a ton in just a
Yeah.
short amount of time. His specter kind of weighs heavy on all of the Stark children. And it's one of the reasons why I think we believe in the family of the Starks so much, is because they never forget their father, which I think for the most part is true for all of us as well. When we lose a loved one or a parent, we tend to think about them in times that we would probably least expect it. So I think that that's pretty powerful.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it continues on a little bit here, and then you're literally in like one of the final paragraphs. Like I said, this chapter is not very long. But who is Queen Jane? Arya wondered briefly. The only queen she knew was Cersei. So like she doesn't even know that there's 5 kings.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, she's completely out of the loop. I mean, she definitely heard some of it from the Brotherhood Without Banners. The Brotherhood
Mhm.
Without Banners is kind of her like catch up, her info dump to get back into the idea of what's going on in Westeros. But all of the details are extremely hazy for her.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so they're continuing on. They're walking a little bit. She's smelling some of the fires and like, or some of the food that's being cooked on the fires and all of that stuff. The smell made Arya's mouth water. Shouldn't we stop? She asked Sandor Clegane. There's Northmen in the tents. She knew them by their beards, by their faces, by their cloaks, the bearskins and sealskins, by the half-heard toast, the songs they sang, Karstarks and Umber men. I bet there are Winterfell men there too. Her father's men, the young wolf's men, the dire wolves of Starks. Your brother will be in the castle, he said. Your mother, too. You want them or not? Yes, she said. What about Sedgekins? Another character. The sergeant had told them to ask for Sedgekins. He could bugger himself with a hot poker. Clegane shook out his whip and sent it hissing through the soft rain to bite at a horse flank. It's your bloody brother I want. Well, her brother is also about to be bloody, by the way.
Yes, yes, he is. And think about how many degrees away from Arya is from being murdered.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they catch them going into the gate and reunite, get the everything exchanged, Arya is part of the Red Wedding and she's dead.
Yeah.
Missing by fractions of a set. I mean, we could also do this with Ned Stark's beheading.
Yeah.
She was lucky to escape.
Yeah. You know, another character on the flip side of this thing, by the way, I think to sort of think of, and then I'll go briefly into just like the hints and stuff. I've got that pulled up here is, and we don't know if his end is the same way it is in the show. I think it's gonna be tough just because a lot of that stuff doesn't exist. But like Roose Bolton's kind of the
Mhm.
flip side of Arya. Like he had
Yeah.
Arya Stark within his grasp. Think of
Mhm.
how much leverage that
Oh, man.
would have given him, and now he doesn't have that.
Nope.
Then he almost has Arya again here, and doesn't have her. And maybe when we come to Roose Bolton's end, we can look back and we can be like, man, here's a
Mhm.
character who messed up, who really messed up multiple times.
Here's a guy.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Chris Collins.
No,
Yeah.
you're right though. I mean, we wonder about like, will Ramsay kill Roose? Like, where does this go? Because Roose Bolton, I think, is a lot more prevalent in the books, considering the fact that he was the one sitting in Harrenhal, and it was not Tywin, which we like that change from the show quite a bit. I think everyone agrees on that because Charles Dance is the friggin' man. However, Roose Bolton has a way bigger role in the books, and is seen more as a main antagonist, at least in my eyes. Ramsay supersedes him both in show and book. For most people, Arya could very well be the end of Roose Bolton.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
I think she might be. I mean, it's going to be tough because you look at the show and the book difference. I mean, there's just so many more variables, like Jon Snow, the Pink
Yeah,
Letter, all totally doesn't
hard
actually
home
have.
happening in a different time. Yeah,
He never actually had Sansa, like all this stuff. Well,
yeah.
but your idea of Arya being the one to do it is interesting because they believe they're married, that he has the real Arya when they don't. And it's like, oh, maybe I'm the real Arya Stark, but maybe she's
Mm.
know it. Maybe it ties into the whole true identity business. I don't know.
What if we go the whole series and Arya Stark is never known as Arya Stark ever again? Like, what if that is her character arc? She comes back and maybe the only person to really recognize her is Jon, because we know Jon and her have a really tight connection. She thinks about him quite a bit. So maybe there's a chance that when Arya Stark comes back to Westeros, she is no longer Arya Stark. I'm going to just go ahead and cut myself off here, though. I think all signs point to her becoming Arya Stark and like fulfilling that role and finding herself. And that's how she ends up getting out of the situation. And I also think that her reconvening with Sansa is going to be one of the biggest moments in the series for the Stark kids. For sure.
Yeah.
So I think I'm just going to go ahead and shit on my own theory there.
No, it's okay. All right. Well, hey, let me pull up here. Sort of last thing here. I'll pull up some of the foreshadowing. There's definitely a lot of cool foreshadowing here. So this is from a Reddit comment and thread. So the last chapter before the Red Wedding, the atmosphere from the beginning is weird, and there's a feeling in the chapter that something's not right. Again, we see the hate Sandor has toward knights, because knights are fools, and it would have been beneath him to look twice at some poxy peasant. Keep your eyes down and your tone respectful, and say sir a lot, and most knights will never see you. They pay more attention to their horse than small folk. Okay, so for some of the hints, the musicians in the near castles were playing a different song than the ones on the castle in the far bank, though it sounded more like a battle than a song. They're not very good, Arya observed. Well, that's because they're not musicians. The music grew still louder as they approached the castle, but under that was a deeper, darker sound. The river, the swollen green fork, growling like a lion in its den. Oh, there you have the force of the lions of Lannister, right? But for every shimmering silk pavilion, there were 24 felt or canvas, opaque and dark. There were barrack tents too, big enough to shelter 20 foot soldiers, even though they were dwarfed by the great feast tents. Beneath the tree, 4 archers were slipping wax strings over the notches of their longbows, but they were not her father's archers. The Starks were outnumbered. The phrase no. They were ready for the fight. They had been preparing and brought a lot of soldiers while the Northmen were enjoying the feast, and everywhere Arya looked, she saw unfamiliar faces, running, drinking, getting ready, while she and Sandor were going deeper into the campus, surrounded by enemies. It's like one of the most insane things about this whole thing, the whole Red Wedding event, is that Arya and Clegane get out of there.
Oh, for sure. Like I said, degrees away from being murdered.
Right. Because everyone there is definitely going to, like, a lot of the people there are going to know him as the Hound. And remember, the Hound at this point,
he's a wanted man.
He's also a wanted man. Exactly.
They want his head. Do you think Robb would have taken him hostage?
No, I don't. I think
it would just let him walk.
I think it would have been another. If that had happened, I think it would have been another Catelyn versus Robb moment that would have built to something else.
Okay. Because for me, I was thinking that yes, they would take him because of how much people put on him that he's just like his brother, and his brother has done all these things during this war, like war crimes. And I was thinking maybe they would feel the need to take him in, like as House Clegane, right? Like,
right. Yeah, I think that if George had kept him alive and nobody had died at the Red Wedding, it would have just been another block in the Catelyn versus Robb, like the
difference of
because then it would have been everyone saying you need to kill this guy or you need to take him prisoner, and Catelyn would be like, well,
change him or something.
Catelyn would be like, well, I got my daughter back. That's what I wanted, and it could have been another piece in the Robb.
You think Catelyn would have said, let him go?
Maybe. I mean, she let Tyrion go.
Yeah, she did. She messed up. She messed up a couple times, didn't she? Didn't she?
Yeah. So
it's interesting to think about.
Yeah. So it ties into that. So, well, with that, Jimmy, we are finally officially here. So we want to thank you guys, as always, for playing the Game of Thrones. In our next episode, we will be discussing A Storm of Swords, Chapter 51, Catelyn 7.
The Red Wedding commences. If you like our podcast, don't forget to subscribe, like us, write a review, leave a comment, or send us a raven at btkcast@gmail.com or bendthekneepodcast.com.
We will see you next time. And remember that winter is coming.